everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Yuna, and before we do anything else, we just have to say thank you to the universe for whatever was this June miracle, because if you've been following my channel for a while, you'll know that my cat Lucy, she has been having a bunch of skin issues, and so she's always been in like a shirt or a cone. But for whatever reason, this past month, like this past couple weeks, it's just fixed itself. It's been almost a year of me taking her to like dermatology specialists, multiple neurologists, trying endless medications and like ointments and balms, and nothing has helped. And just suddenly she decided she's better. So everyone say congratulations to Lucy. Oh, she also just turned 17 like the last couple weeks. So she is a grandma. She's a venerated elder. So everybody show her respect and say happy birthday and congratulations. And that's it. That's the whole video. I'm obviously kidding, but that is probably the most important news I have to share about my life at this current moment. All jokes aside, I have gathered everyone here today to talk about the 15 books that I read in June, but I do have a couple more announcements before we get to the books. I know Pride Month is technically over, but since so many of the books that I read in June were queer-centric, I just wanted to wear the shirt, one of my favorite shirts. I don't know if you'll be able to see all of it, but it says, "Be gay, do crimes." We're like 30 seconds in and this video is already all over the place, but the actual big announcement that I want to share with everyone. So if you watched my July TBR video, you will know that to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers on this channel, I want to do, it's like a small fun giveaway. It's nothing extravagant, but I want to do a small giveaway to give a subscriber the chance to win a free book, a book of up to $25 US dollars in value. I've structured the giveaway so that if you are the person that gets the magic golden ticket, then there are 3 options you can pick for your prize, so that at least one of them should work for you. And I think for any international subscribers, it's probably going to be option number 3. I will have a post in the post section of my YouTube page, and in the descriptions I will give you all the details, so you will see how to enter, the date that I'm going to be announcing the winner, the prizes will be all laid out there, and I'll be making a post on my Instagram. But let me walk you through the 3 different prizes. If you're the winner, option number 1 is a $25 Pango gift card. So just give me your email address and I will send you a $25 gift card, and you can use it however you choose. Option number 2, if you would like to receive a book or books from Pango, but you don't have a Pango account, then what you can do is send me the links to the book or books that you want of up to $25 in value, including shipping, and I will purchase the books for you and have them sent to whatever shipping address that you send me. So if you find a seller who has multiple books that you want and that plus shipping equals around $25, then again, just send me the list and I will have them shipped to you. Option number 3 is if you don't use Pango or don't want to use Pango and instead you would like to support your favorite local indie bookstore or whatever, then send me the link to their website with the option to purchase an or digital gift card, and I will, again with your email, send you a $25 gift card to your favorite bookstore. Option number 3 does unfortunately exclude Barnes & Nobles because they are currently on my shit list for their really crappy stance on AI generated books. So how do you enter? What are the parameters? So there are multiple ways that you can enter the giveaway, and you can have multiple entries. First of all, you have to be subscribed to this YouTube channel, obviously. So subscribe to my channel and you can comment in the comment section of this video with a book emoji and the title of a book that you would love to purchase if you were to win the prize. If you want additional entries into the giveaway, what you're going to do is follow me over on Instagram, and you're going to find the giveaway post that I'm going to be posting probably tonight or maybe tomorrow, probably tomorrow actually. Go to the comment section of that post and tag a friend who you think would be interested in the giveaway, and also share it to your story. The comment and the story are going to be 2 extra entries, so you can do one or you can both, and I will enter you accordingly. I will gather all the entries, and on the day that the giveaway ends, which I can't remember now, but all the information again will be in the description or in the posts, I will enter all the names and use a random generator to pick the winner. I'll announce it on YouTube and on Instagram. Contact me, pick which way you would like to receive your gift card, and you win. I don't know if I explained any of that clearly, but all the details, like I said, will be in the post and the description box, like I mentioned. So good luck to all of you. Thank you so much for being here, for supporting the channel, and I hope that whoever wins has a grand old time reading whatever they purchase with the gift card. But now that all of those disjointed announcements are out of the way, let's get to the books. Let's get to me talking about all the books that I read last month. I have a number of books that I read last month. I'm just going to be breezing by, partially because most of them, or like half of them, are books that I read for my very long queer reading vlog, so you can check that out if you want my detailed thoughts. I go into them with multiple check-ins, and I think most of them have a spoiler and spoiler-free section, so if you want more extended thoughts, then definitely check that out. But I'm going to try to keep those books relatively succinct. I say this every single time and end up rambling anyway, but I'm going to try to keep it succinct. But I do also have 3 books that I haven't talked about anywhere else on this channel, and I love them so much, so I'm going to try and spend the meat of the video talking about those books, and they will be at the end. So if you've already watched my queer reading vlog and you want to like jump ahead to new content, then just head over to the end. I have the timestamps and the chapters. First, I'm going to talk about a short story novella collection that I read some books from. The collection itself is called Trespass, and all of the stories in this collection were written around the theme of animal instinct or strange happenings revolving around animals. I believe there are 7 or 8 stories total, but I only ended up reading 4 because the other authors I had no interest in reading. And I would say that overall I would give the collection, as far as the ones I read, like a 3-star rating. My favorite was Backbone of the World, which was written by Stephen Graham Jones, who's the author of Buffalo Hunter. But in the same vein as the other collections that I've read, they were fine. I feel like there's one story that stood out to me each time I read a collection, but overall they're pretty forgettable, so I'm not sure if I'm going to keep reading these collections or not. I just thought that they might be fun ways to introduce myself to some of these authors that I have been meaning to read or wanting to read. Like in this collection there was Silvia Moreno Garcia, and I've wanted to read something of hers for a while, but I think yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll try one more collection, and if I don't like them, I move on with my life. But overall, this collection was pretty forgettable. I didn't think that there was anything to write home about or shout from the rooftops about, so it was fine. Next, I'm going to talk about these 7 books that I read for my queer reading vlog, which is already out. Like I said, I will link it in the description and the little card in the corner of the video. The first book that I read was The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw. This little novella is only about 100 pages, and this is a dark fantasy horror, like it's a gory atmospheric retelling sort of The Little Mermaid. It's basically a very eerie, bloody tale of a mermaid who leaves the kingdom of the prince who trapped her on land after her children are born, and they eat the king and all the people of the kingdom. The mermaid decides to leave the kingdom with a non-binary plague doctor, and they travel together until they come across this town society collection of children, undead children who can't die and are being kept alive by these weird people. This book is heavy on the vibes. It is dripping with atmosphere, and Cassandra Khaw's writing is so darkly scrumptious. It is so delicious, and the vocabulary on this person, I was pulling out my little mobile dictionary every other sentence because I was like, what the hell is this word? I've literally never heard of it before. I don't know, Cassandra Khaw's writing feels like dark wine and smooth velvet and bloody lips. I had a really good time reading this. I think I gave it 3.5 or 3.75, which I know for some people, if you're new here, might sound like not a super high rating, but for me, a 3.5 star book is a book that I really liked. I would say that if you are someone who wants a strong plot or, you know, slowly built out relationships, this isn't that. It is very much more, I think, about like the vibe, the atmosphere, this grotesque fairy tale quality, and just immersing you in that environment more so than like strong character arcs or plot. There are arcs, and there is, you know, some plot, but it's, you know, it's only 100 pages, so you're only going to get so much. Yeah, if you are interested in something that is gory, that is bloody, that is luscious and beautiful, and you want a weird queer love story, then maybe check out Salt Grows Heavy. Next in that reading vlog, I read A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy, The Monk and the Robot Duology by Becky Chambers, and honest to God, thank the universe for Becky Chambers. My love, my favorite sci-fi author, did not disappoint. This duology features 2 non-binary protagonists. We have Moscap, who is this earnest, curious, very endearing robot, and we have sibling Dex, who is a tea monk who's kind of feeling a bit lost in their life, feeling like they don't know what their purpose is. These books take place on a planet called Pango, where hundreds of years ago there were a bunch of robots who gained sentience and decided to go off and live on their own separate from humans, and now Moscap has been sent back to see how humans are doing and to basically do field research on the question of what do human beings need. These books are so sweet, and I think so important for people to read because they talk about things that I think most people struggle with, and if you're not struggling with, I think there are still questions that are worth you exploring. These books dig into things like purpose, contentment, life, value. They ask questions like, do you have to be productive to be valuable? Why do people feel like they need to have a purpose? Is it not enough just to be alive and joyful and marveling at the world? Like, what is it about society and the economy that has made people feel like they have to be ambitious or they have to achieve something in order to be important? These books aren't really books that are trying to answer those questions, and they're not dogmatic. They're not telling you how you have to think, but I think that these books act very much like a warm invitation to think about these things and to maybe imagine a world or a way of living that might be gentler, that might be kinder, and might be more sustainable. The first book, Song for the Wild Build, I would say very much focuses on the things I talked about, like purpose, contentment, value, ambition. And this book, Prayer for the Crown Child, which is the second book, incorporates other questions about bodily autonomy. Is your identity tied or not tied to your body? You know, complicated family relationships. Once again, a book that doesn't necessarily offer you answers to any of those topics or questions about those topics, but just opens the door to have a conversation about them. If you're a person who feels a bit lost in life, who feels like you can't find your purpose, who feels like you're kind of floundering a bit, then maybe these books would be really good for you to pick up. I just thought they were such a balm to my soul, and they made me cry, not necessarily out of sadness or even happiness, but just out of this sense of relief that there are other people out there in the world, you know, Becky Chambers and people reading these books who are thinking about the questions that I'm thinking about and who perhaps are hoping for the type of world or change in the world that I envision. Incredible books. As a series, I would give it like 4.5 stars, like very close to 5 stars. This book is 5 stars for me, and this one is like 4.5 stars. I would say just because the things that are explored in this book are more immediately relevant to me and the things I'm thinking about, not because this is any less important. It just, this one resonated with me a bit more. So either of these books, both of these books, I mean, they're short, so both of these books I implore you to pick up. After that, I picked up a book and did this book dirty. That is A Language of Limbs by Dylan Hardcastle, and I'm so sorry, Dylan. I am dumb of ass. I don't know what to say. This is an unapologetically queer story about two women, one who embraces her queerness and one who represses it. Their stories are told and labeled as Limb 1 and Limb 2. Now, originally, I thought that that was the premise, but somewhere along the line, before I picked up this book, I convinced myself that the actual story was about one woman and the two limbs were exploring two versions of that one person's life, depending on how she chose to live it. So instead of me reading this book as the two limbs being two distinct human beings, I literally read the entire book up until like the second to last page, thinking that this was one person. And so I just feel so fucking dumb, and I feel bad because I was analyzing this book in like with the wrong framework. It really isn't until I think like the second to last page, or like the last few pages, that I realized that I had been thinking about it all wrong. And if you want to see, you can again check out the reading vlog. But even with my one brain cell not firing, I would say that this is a stunning book. It is really beautifully written, it's conceptual, it's stylized, and there are multiple parts where I feel like the form of it and the cadence and feel of it bordered more on being like long form poetry than the classical book, and I love that experience. There are so many stunning quotes and lines from this book. I loved how energetic and powerful and like bursting with this queer energy the writing style was. Not even just the story, but the actual prose to me was just like kinetic. I could feel the energy in it. I did have notes about this book. There are some things that I didn't love as much, or things that I might have liked to see done a little differently, but overall I think it was beautiful. It's hard for me to rate it because again I had such a skewed reading experience because I was thinking about it all fucking wrong. But if I would say that I would give this book 4 stars. I really loved it. I would highly recommend for anyone who is wanting to read about not just queer trauma, because there is a lot of queer trauma in this book. We have unaccepting family members, we have homophobia, we talk about the AIDS pandemic, but it's not just queer trauma, it's also about queer joy, it's about queer connection, queer community, queer support. There's a lot of beautiful things that happen in this book. So yeah, I would recommend it, and just be smarter than I was and go into it understanding that it's about 2 different women. After that, I read a book that I would recommend to all of you who like messy people, and that is Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is another sapphic book, this time about two teenage girls who live in this very small town in the 1990s in Ireland. They're experiencing their first love and exploring their sexuality, and again, this claustrophobically small town where everyone is up in your business, everyone knows what's going on in your life. The protagonist is a girl named Lucy, and she is falling deep in love. She is down bad for her friend named Susanna. She is navigating between exploring and like following this newfound desire versus living a life that is expected of her and is safe by being with her male best friend Martin, he's the person that everyone in this town, her family, all her friends expect her to end up with. And Martin definitely wants to be with Lucy, so it is, is she going to reciprocate his feelings and go after this safe, straight life, or is she going to try to be with Susanna? I think you would like this book if you like reading about selfish people making poorly advised decisions, and if you like romanticizing questionable choices. And I mean that in the most fun, non-judgmental way. I think if I had to describe this book, I might say that it's kind of the sapphic love child of normal people and the Neapolitan quartet. It's kind of like that, where there are a lot of unlikable people making weird, questionable decisions, and yet you are sort of rooting for them. There are almost no decisions that Lucy made that I personally agreed with. I was just like, phew, girly, you are making some choices. I'm kind of going back and forth on what to rate this because I think the prose is beautiful. I think the characters were so frustrating and interestingly developed. But because I found some of the characters so unlikable and like I was so frustrated with the choices, I would say like 3.5 purely because of how annoyed I was. But I think the story is supposed to be that way. Like, it's supposed to be complicated. You're supposed to have complicated feelings about it. So, I don't know. I'm going back and forth between like 3.5 and 4 stars. Ask me in a week. Maybe I'll have an answer for you. Whether it's 3.5 or 4 stars, I had a really good time reading this. I had a lot of fun. So I would recommend for anyone looking for a messy, sapphic, coming-of-age story. After Sunburn was the 6th book that I read for that reading vlog, Devil of the Deep by Valencia Jean-Francois. This is the book that was sold to me at BookCon as a book that I should pick up if I wanted to read about Black, queer, Haitian mermaids and pirates, and I obviously picked it up. This is a book that follows 3 main characters. We have Lou, who is a trans man, and he is a officer in the fleet. We have Nena, who is a queer pirate. She is actually the Devil of the Deep, or she is the pirate that people call the Devil of the Deep. Third main character is a teenage mermaid girl who has come to land on the run named Pearl. I thought that this book had a really fun, colorful premise and really intriguing world building with cool lore and magic and gods. But overall, I ended up feeling like the story was pretty messy. It just felt a bit unfocused, and there were elements of the different character relationships and arcs that to me were either rushed or just fully incomplete. It is to the point where I'm not actually sure if this is meant to be a standalone or if it's supposed to be the first in a series. There are just aspects of the character arcs and relationships that I can't go into without it being spoilery. Actually, I can say this because it is on the back, so it's not really a spoiler. Nana and Lou have history. They were once in love, and now they're sort of on the opposite ends of this fight, right? Nana is a pirate and Lou is a fleet officer who is partially charged with finding and catching pirates. So you know that there is this history with their relationship, and that relationship, there was so much left undone or unexplored. So overall, while I enjoyed the framework and the setting and the queer rep, again, there's a lot of queer rep in this book that I thought was well done, I would say that I would give this book 3 stars. I liked it, but I did have a lot of notes, and I don't think that it lived up to its potential. But if you're just looking for, I think, a fun, magical time, and you want to read, again, about Black, queer, Haitian mermaids and pirates, I wouldn't discourage you from reading this book. I just thought that it wasn't as strong as it could have been. The last book that I read for my queer reading vlog was a doozy. Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. This is my second book by Douglas Stewart. The first one that I read was Shuggie Bain, which I loved. I adored that book so much, unexpectedly so. And Young Mungo was also such a strong story, and it, once again, much like Shuggie Bain, had me in my feelings and very uncomfortable and very scared. Young Mungo is about a boy, a young boy named Mungo. He is a young teenager who is coming of age while living with his older sister, his older brother, and his mother, his very absent, neglectful mother, who is addicted to alcohol and just kind of like wanders in and out of their lives. He's basically being raised by his older sister, and unfortunately also his older brother, who is homophobic and abusive. The story is interesting because it's told through two different timelines and they alternate chapters, so you go back and forth in time. And one of the timelines, the one that you open up with, you have Mungo being sent away on this weird fishing trip with these two adult men, and you get the sense that his mom is forcing him to go on this trip as a punishment of sorts. Like something has happened that has made her want to send him away with these men, and you don't know what that is, but that is revealed to you in bits and pieces in the other timeline, which is told in flashbacks. In that timeline, we have Mungo meeting and falling in love with another boy named James, and the love story of James and Mungo, I think, is just so sweet and tender and awkward and realistic, and you just have them getting to know each other, learning about each other, learning how to talk to and interact with each other, and I just thought all of that was really, really beautiful. But you know that something happens between them meeting and Mungo being sent on this fishing trip, and I don't know what to say. This book is really rough. I would say absolutely check your trigger warnings, your content warnings before picking up this book, because there is some heavy stuff that happens in here that I was so uncomfortable reading. But it is a powerful story, and while there is a lot of darkness in here, I think that Mungo is just such a wonderful character. He's just such a sweet soul with so much love to give, and it just made me so protective of him in a very similar way to how I felt about Shuggie and Shuggie Bane. Douglas Stewart is such a master of writing very complicated characters. There are characters in here whom there are points at which I feel for them, and at other points I really just want to throttle them. I want to wrap my fingers around their necks. But yeah, he writes these characters really believably, and it is able to evoke both sympathy and frustration, and sometimes it's like pure disgust. There are some people in here who I think are just evil. There are some people where if I had one bullet a day, it's for you. I think I would give this book 4 stars. I really loved it. I would say that of the books that I read of Douglas Stewart, Shuggie Bane is still my favorite, but I thought this was really strong. And if you feel that you have the stomach and the constitution at the moment to read some dark stuff, this is a really raw and real story about queer love, about queer coming of age, with a main character who I just think is so endearing. So those are the 7 books I read for the queer reading vlog. As I've said multiple times now, if you want more thoughts, if you want to hear me talk about those books at length, check out the reading vlog. But now I'm going to move on to the books that I haven't talked about yet, and let's start with a short story collection from an author who is new to me. I read Sabrina and Corina by Callie Ferrado Anstein. I don't know if it's Callie or Collie, and I just want to say I love this cover so much. I think I mentioned it in my TBR video for June, but I just think that it's such a stunning cover. This collection explores the lives of different indigenous Latina characters, and through these different stories we explore different aspects of their lives and cultures and communities. I feel like, as commonly happens with collections, I liked some of the stories more than others. There were none that I thought were straight up bad or boring, but I think that there were definitely some that I connected with more or I thought were more impactful. Sabrina and Corina is a moving narrative of unrelenting feminine power and an exploration of the universal experiences of abandonment, heritage, and an eternal sense of home. Yeah, all of the stories center, I think, female experiences, these women's experiences, the dangers that they live through, the contributions that they make, the things that they wrestle with in terms of their identity and relationships. And I think that my personal favorite story actually is a story that the book is named after, Sabrina and Corina. Overall, I would rate this whole collection 3.5 stars. I really liked it, but I can't say that after reading this I'm like really chomping at the bit to read more by this author. I had mentioned that she has a full-length book that I had seen at the library, and if I really liked this, and I was going to try and read that sooner rather than later. I'm not putting her aside or anything, but it wasn't anything that made me feel like, oh, I have to read more by her as soon as possible, which again might not be fair because there were some stories in here that I thought were really strong, but I think just the overall effect was that I liked it. I really liked it. Next, I'm going to talk about my favorite fucking book from June, and it is actually the first book, like full-length book, that I read this month, and wow. Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. 5 stars. Across the board, 5 stars. Easy. Where do I even begin with this book? This book broke me apart and laid me bare. This book ripped my heart right out of my chest and had me folding in on myself in this just like origami form of emotional distress. This is a 5-star book for me and I won't stop raving about it, but I have to tell you right now, do not read this book if you are not in a place to engage with some really dark, traumatizing material and scenes. There are some scenes in here that honestly I would rather be waterboarded than read again, and that's not because they're poorly written or anything like that. It's just they were so painful and like uncomfortable to read. Betty is the coming of age story of a girl named Betty who is a part Cherokee little girl who is growing up in rural Ohio in the Appalachians with her family. She has a rather troubled mother. She has many siblings, and she has who I think is the core and heart of her world and this story, her father, Landon Carpenter. Landon Carpenter is this devoted storyteller of a father. This book is about the many struggles and trials and traumas and pains that this family goes through, and I have to tell you that the list of trigger warnings for this book is basically a CVS receipt. Despite how I am describing this book and how dramatic I am being, this book for me, it did not cross over into trauma porn or being gratuitous. Of course, many people may feel different, our thresholds may vary, but for me, even despite all of the pain that is woven through this book and these characters' lives, I didn't think it was trauma porn. What makes all the pain that much worse for me in this book is that the book is also filled with so much hope and wonder and love and devotion. I said that the center of Betty's world, and I think the driving heart of this book, is their father, Landon Carpenter, and he is this Cherokee man. And my God, I fell in love with Landon over the course of this book. Landon is the storyteller, and through the stories that he tells about his Cherokee heritage and the world, he crafts through his words this beautiful world that he wants his children to believe in. He wants his children to believe that there is so much goodness and magic in the world and that they can make a place for themselves. And he is just so loved and cherished by his children and even by his wife, who again is very troubled, and she has a lot of trauma of her own that limits sort of who she can be. But he is so loved, and he is also a man. He's a Cherokee man who has gone through a lot in his life. He's gone through a lot of pain and humiliation and racism. And I can see a world in which, or a different story in which, such a man might take those things and internalize them and transmute them into like abuse or cruelty towards people around him. But that's not Landon, and he's just, he's such an incredible character. And the love that he and Betty share, the relationship that they have with each other, had me in tears like every other goddamn page. The writing style, let me talk about the writing style. It is so stunning. It is so stunning. Tiffany's way with words must be studied. It is so incredibly emotional and sharp and vibrant, and I don't know, there's just such power and punch to the way she puts words together. I also think it's really hard to write from the first person point of view of a young character, like a child, and make it believable but also eloquent and still have like the elegance and sophistication that you want in your prose for this type of book. And I think that Tiffany fucking nailed it. The characters are also incredibly complicated and vibrant and believable, and there's not a single simple relationship in this book. Everything is, again, very complex and has so many facets. One of the many things that this book explores is how the people who are closest to you are often the people who hurt you the most. You know, Betty and Landon face a lot of bigotry and racism, and that's not always, the shot's not always coming from outside. Sometimes the gun is fired from in the same room as you. It's your family. Sometimes it be the people who are closest to you who cut the deepest. What is additionally so impactful about this book, and when I found out it again had me in tears, is the fact that this is actually a semi-autobiographical story about Tiffany's mom, Betty. Like, Betty is Tiffany's mother, and this is the story more or less of her life, her childhood, and her family. And if you go to Tiffany's website, she has photos of Betty, like the actual Betty. She has photos of her mom, she has photos of their family, she has photos of Landon Carpenter. And so to imagine what must have gone into writing this story, like talking to her mom about these experiences, it's like, I'm gonna cry again. But yeah, I just can't imagine the kind of pain and love that goes into writing your mother's story, especially when it's a story like this. And I just can't imagine what it must have felt like to, as Betty, the mother, like open this book and to read the type of devotion and care that your child has put into telling your story. I think it's a work of love and sweat and tears, I am sure. And so I'll put some of the pictures from the website on the screen, but I think you should go and check it out yourself, because there's just so much there. There's so much history, there's so much love, there's so much trauma. Incredible. I'm gonna read you the first page of chapter 1, and I'm gonna keep it in the spoiler free section, because again, it's the first page. Literally, there's not really a spoiler on here, but I just want to give you an idea of the prose and sort of the atmosphere of the book. A girl comes of age against the knife. She must learn to bear its blade, to be cut, to bleed, to scar over, and still somehow be beautiful and with good enough knees to take the sponge to the kitchen floor every Saturday. You're either lost or you're found. These truths can argue one another for an infinity, and what is infinity but a tangled square, a cracked circle, a space, a fuchsia sky? If we bring it down to earth, infinity is a series of rolling hills, a countryside in Ohio where all the tall grass snakes know how angels lose their wings. I remember the fierce love and devotion as much as I remember the violence. When I close my eyes, I see the lime green clover that grew around our barn in the spring while wild dogs drove away our patience and our tenderness. Time will never be the same, so we give time another beautiful name until it's easier to carry as we go on remembering where it is we've come from. Where I came from was a family of 8 children. More than one of us would die in the prize-winning years of youth. Some blame God for taking too few. Others accuse the devil of leaving too many. Between God and the devil, our family tree grew with rotten roots, broken branches, and fungus on the leaves. This is a description of Betty's father, again from like the 3rd page of chapter 1, so I'm going to leave it in the spoiler-free section. My father's soul was from another time, a time when the land was peopled by tribes who heard the earth and respected it. His own respect filled up inside him until he was the greatest man I ever knew. I loved him for this and more, like how he planted violets but never remembered they were purple. I loved him for getting his hair cut like a lopsided hat every 4th of July, and I loved him for holding a light on our coughs when we were sick. Can you see the germs? He'd ask, shining the light beam on the air between us. They're all playing violin. Your cough is their song. I almost don't even want to do a spoiler section because I feel like this story is so incredible, and you really have to read the entirety of it and fall into the story and the characters to get the most out of it, I think. But in case you have already read this book and we just want to like talk about some of the specifics of this book that I found so painful and beautiful, I'll do a spoiler section now and just like talk pretty disconnectedly and disjointedly about some of my thoughts. Where do I even begin with spoilers? I think I'll just talk about some of the things that happened that I thought like hurt me the most. One being everything that happened with Betty's mom. You find out that Betty's mom was repeatedly and for an extended period of time, like pretty much her whole life, she was horrifically sexually abused by her dad. Like she was raped repeatedly and even impregnated. Her first child is actually the product of her father abusing her. Yeah, Betty's mom is just such a scarred and traumatized person from that experience, and yet through Betty's eyes, you can see the way that she wants to or tries to love her children in the ways that she can, but she is really just, she's so hurt and broken and has never really been able to process what happened to her. And there is a scene, I don't even know that I can talk about it, but there's a scene with this cat. If you've read this book, then you know, but there's a scene with this cat named Birdie who has a bunch of kittens, and I can't even like talk about it, but basically there's this cat that Betty names Birdie, who is just like the sweet cat who gives birth. She has a bunch of kittens in Betty's room, and Betty's mom has a kind of, I don't know, like a mental break or some sort of episode, and she ends up killing all of the cats and all the kittens. And the way that scene is written, I was so beside myself, because I mean obviously it's horrific on so many levels. It's because on one hand you have what's immediately happening, right, this abuse of these innocent little animals, like these tiny newborn kittens, and then you also have Betty's confusion and her horror and her guilt over what's happening and her confusion over what her mom's doing. But then you also have Betty's mom, Tiffany McDaniel's grandmother, right? And you think about what she has gone through and what has happened to make her so broken and scarred and put her in such a place with her life that she is doing this and not even really having control over what's happening. It was just, I don't know, I don't know if you can see, I literally just got goosebumps thinking about that scene. Betty has 8 siblings, like I said, and they are all very complicated people. Some are incredibly endearing and others are very frustrating, but they're all like unbelievably human. Unfortunately, most of them end up dying before they reach adulthood in like pretty tragic, horrific ways. One of the sibling relationships in this book that is probably most horrific and pretty central to Betty's experience growing up has to do with her older sister Freya and her older brother Leland. Leland and Freya are the two oldest siblings, and Betty finds out at some point while she is a child that for pretty much all their lives, Leland has been raping and abusing Freya. At some point, Freya even gets pregnant and almost dies trying to abort the baby. But there is a scene in this book where Betty is thinking about Freya and talking about her, and I just thought that it was so painful and so believable as coming from this young child, and I'm gonna read a portion of that. I still think about Freya every day. Sometimes I think she's just hiding inside of me. If I could drop a long rope down my throat, maybe she'd climb out and eat pistachio pudding like she used to when she was still around to have dessert with. She was a wonderful girl. It's hard to say how many ways. Her light brown hair was still long then, her gray eyes like the edge of a storm. Her small body, a very little thing. You could fit all of her in the palm of your hand, lose her the same way. It'd be so much easier if the bad things in our lives were kept in our skin that we could shut off like a snake. Then we could leave all the dried, horrid things on the ground and step forward. Free of them. God, I feel like it is so hard to talk about this book and explain to you succinctly or even at length why it is so good, but you just see through Betty's eyes the things that her family goes through, the things that her siblings and her parents try to process and understand, and the ways that they try to become their own people, the things that they're trying to break free from, the things that they're trying to leave behind, the things that they're trying to become. And Betty is also, you know, she's her father's daughter, and she is a storyteller, she is a writer, and you see her throughout the course of the book. She writes poems, she processes her thoughts and her feelings, and a lot of that through writing. And she even enters her poems in some contests and things like that. And obviously her dad knows his children so well, and he adores Betty, and he knows that she wants to be a writer. And unfortunately at the end of the book, Landon does pass away, and it is like this shattering for this family. But Betty finds out that before he died, he bought her a typewriter, and when she goes to find the typewriter, she finds that he has written in it, actually, he has a piece of paper in there, and he has written Betty, chapter 1. And, that also messed me up because, you know, even in passing, even after he has gone, he has opened up this world for his child and given Betty a means and ways to tell her story and to leave behind the things that she wants to behind and maybe become something else, become something beyond the trauma. Okay, I'm gonna end the spoiler section there because I don't even know how to talk coherently, even at length, about the things that happened in this book and the ways that they moved me and the things that they made me feel. But I would just say that please read this book. Again, if you feel that you are up to it, please read this book after you check the content warnings. I just think that this is a book that has so much heart and wonder and pain, and I think that it is absolutely a contender. It's like up there for probably what might be my favorite book of the year. At the very least, it is absolutely my favorite book from last month. Like, it's a book that I wish I could find in Korean. I looked it up because I was like, oh, I like really want my mom to read this, even though it is a horrific story on so many levels. I just thought that it moved me so much that I would love to share it with my mom, but I couldn't find it in Korean. If anyone knows if this book has been translated into Korean anywhere, let me know, but I don't think it has. I could go on and on and on about this, but I think it's a book that you really have to read because the way that the story is woven together, the way that you read about the characters, and again, the things that they want and become and have to overcome and sometimes can't overcome. It's just best experience as a whole. I don't think that I can do it justice, but I am trying so hard just to convey how much this book hurt me and how much I am grateful to have read this story. I don't know how anything is going to live up to how I felt about Betty, but another book that I read this month that I thought was so strong was Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. What a bizarre little book with so much heart. This is a book that follows the life of a girl named Adina from basically birth into adulthood. Adina believes from the time that she is a child, she believes she is an alien that has been sent from her home planet of cricket rice, and she has been sent to Earth to observe humans and to send back her observations to her superiors. The way she does this is through a fax machine. So she will observe something about human life, human society, human relationships. She'll write it out and send it through this fax machine, and it goes to someone who does occasionally respond to her. She believes that she is supposed to do this and complete her duty until her superiors decide to deactivate her on Earth and bring her back home. Adina is very heavily coded to be either autistic or neurodivergent in some way, and her experience of feeling that she is a literal alien who doesn't really know how to interact with humans or to relate to humans, who is always yearning to be called back home to Cricket Rice, her home planet. It's very much a metaphor for the experience of neurodivergent people. She struggles with things that are recognizable as struggles of neurodivergent people, autistic people, like sensory overload, like social masking, difficulty communicating in non-literal ways. Her communications through this faculty with her superiors, they're her way of trying to understand the world around her, trying to understand her relationships. I think it is very much a way for her to process her loneliness, her otherness, her difficulty reaching out to her peers and her family. But she also talks about things that are joyful in her life. She talks about her friendships. She talks about things that she enjoys doing. She talks about her dog that she gets later in life, who she loves very much. And the book follows her through adulthood into like middle age. And I can see that maybe some people might have a hard time connecting with Adina, partially because the writing style is not dry, but it's very straightforward. It's very clean and straightforward, and it's not told in first person either. So it's a third person point of view told in a very simple writing style, and I think that there sometimes feels like a distance between you and Adina, and that might make the story feel a bit dry for some people. Like, I didn't have that experience, and I really enjoyed it because I understood that that was part of the story, that was part of Adina's experience and the way that she thinks. But I can see why some people might not enjoy that aspect of it. I'll do a really quick spoiler section for Beautyland because I just want to say one thing about the book that's spoilery because it's at the very end. But I mentioned that Adina believed that she was just waiting to basically be deactivated, and that once she stopped living this human life on Earth, she would be brought back to live with her people in her homeland on the planet of Cricket Rice. At the end of the book, once Adina is an adult, she goes through some really painful things. She loses her beloved dog, who is just like a light in her life and a constant companion who is non-judgmental, who is always there for her. And she also loses her one friend that she's had since childhood, who has always been very accepting of Adina and very kind to her. And she loses this friend to cancer, and so she has gone through all these things. She's lost basically two of the closest, most important relationships that she has, and these relationships mean a lot to Adina because, again, she is an alien, she is neurodivergent, and she has a hard time connecting with people and forging like really meaningful relationships a lot of the time because people aren't that welcoming or understanding of the way that her mind works. So after she's gone through these things, she basically decides that she would like to deactivate and end her time on Earth and return to Cricket Rice. So the implication at the end of the book is that Adina ends herself. She ends her life. Now, it's hard to decide how to feel about this ending. You know, obviously, if you do believe, as Adina does, that she is an alien and that she's just going to be returning home, then that is probably a big relief for her, and it's bittersweet. But if you believe that she is a human being who has processed her life in this way and she is not actually an alien, then you know that she is really just ending her life. And it's hard to know how to feel about this because it's so heartbreaking to think that this book is perhaps saying that the life of some neurodivergent people is so lonely and so difficult, and the experience of being othered is such that the release or relief from that is to end one's life. But it is written in a really poignant and heartfelt way. So I would love to hear how some other people thought about the ending of this book, because I'm definitely conflicted about it. Like, I understand what it's saying or what the author was doing with that ending and all of that, but I just, it's still in my heart. I hate that that's what happened. But I'll end the quick spoiler section there. I don't know, I thought it was a really special book and I really enjoyed it. I think I would give this 4 stars. And finally, the last book that I read last month and loved was Okweke Emezi's Pet. This is a young adult book, and this is the type of young adult book that I just feel like should be on every summer reading list. And this is a type of young adult book that makes me cringe when people just say that young adult books can't be written well, or that you shouldn't have certain expectations of young adult books. Young adult books can be impactful, can be beautifully written, can have important themes and believable characters and lovely writing. Like, this Pet is the story of a trans black girl named Jam, and she lives in this society that is sort of like post-conflict. They live in a society where all of the monsters have been dealt with, and by monsters they mean like racists, bigots, homophobes. Like, all of those types of people have been identified as problematic and either rehabilitated or dealt with in some way, and they live in a post-monster society. But what happens is a creature named Pet comes through a painting, comes alive through a painting to Jam and tells Jam that there is a monster in her town and that they have to hunt and destroy this monster. And it is the story of Jam and Pet and one of Jam's friends' redemption trying to hunt down and find this monster. This book is so good. I love so many elements of this book. I love the representation that's in it. We know, like I said, we have a trans Black main character. I love the friendships. Jam and Redemption's friendship is so tender and loving and compassionate, and I just think that is something that is so important to see for young people. I love the themes that are explored. We have so many themes that are in here. We have legacy, we have the importance of history, the importance of not just sweeping things under the rug because they were problematic or traumatic, facing the history that we have lived through, being able to reckon with the communal traumas and to think of ways forward that aren't just about forgetting. It's definitely a young adult book that touches on some heavier topics. Again, I would check trigger warnings, but there are things talked about like child abuse, racism, all of that. I think it's done in such a compassionate way too, because Okweke knows that these are important things to expose young people to, but it is done in a way that isn't, I don't know what's the right word, gratuitous? Whatever the right word is, I think that it was balanced really well in terms of introducing and engaging with difficult topics, but keeping it a appropriate young adult book. I think appropriate is a loaded word that gets weaponized a lot by people who just don't want certain content in kids' schools, like anything about racism, anything about social justice, it's not appropriate, and that's not what I mean. Now I'm babbling and getting on the topic of like book bans, but basically I just think that this is a book that did a really incredible job of balancing these difficult, dark, and potentially traumatizing topics, but making it digestible for young audiences while still trusting that young people have the emotional wherewithal and can be emotionally intelligent enough to engage with these topics and should be allowed to engage with these topics. I really do recommend this even for adult readers. I just think this is the type of young adult book that I enjoy, where it doesn't feel like it's dumbed down anything because it's young adult. And again, it's the type of young adult book that I would point people to if they say that you shouldn't be so critical of young adult books, that YA books aren't meant to be particularly sophisticated. You know, Okweke wrote this book and had so much trust that their readers, even the young ones, are going to be able to understand difficult things, are going to be able to take part in, you know, complicated conversations and histories and topics and be able to digest them. So I implore you to pick this up, whether you are 16 or 45. I think that this is a really powerful book and it is very well written. I would give this, I don't know, what would I rate this? 4.5 stars, 4 stars, 4.5 stars. Very strong, and it made me want to pick up the rest of Okweke's books post haste. And I did actually order The Death of Vivek Oji, and it arrived. I'm going to be reading that as a buddy read with someone on Instagram, and I definitely want to read the rest of their books too. I love that they don't have any intention of being pigeonholed into a single genre. You know, they write young adult, they write adult, and they also have a book out that I think is like a dark romantasy. It's like a spicy dark romantasy. I can't remember what it is called, but I'll put it on the screen. I wanted to pick that up because I'm not a romantasy reader, some of you may know, but when I have an author like this who is this good. And with that, I have finally made it to the end of all of the books that I read in June. I had a great reading month, if you couldn't tell. I had a bunch of books that were over 4 stars, which rarely happens for me. I feel like the vast majority of my books sit in like the 3 to 3.75 range, which is good because, again, those are books I liked too, really liked. But 4 stars, 5 stars, 4.5 stars, they are far and few between historically for me. So the fact that I have multiple books that are rated pretty highly. I had a great month. I think I have found a contender for my favorite book of the month with Betty. I have found an author that I think I want to read their entire catalog with Okweke. So overall, just a great time. Oh, and The Monk and the Robot duology was incredible. Actually, if I were to say my 3 favorite books of this month, my 3 favorite books for this month, they would be Betty, Pet, and A Psalm for the Wild Bills. 3 wildly different books, very different, but emotionally impactful for different reasons. We have an incredibly painful coming of age historical fiction, literary fiction story. We have a YA fantasy, and we have a very cozy sci-fi fantasy book about the philosophy of life. So all three of these I would implore you to read, and if you pick up any of them, definitely let me know what you thought, or if you have read any of them, let me know what you thought. Let me know in the comments what your favorite book you read in June was, and don't forget to enter the giveaway. Don't forget to enter the giveaway. Comment in the comment sections a book emoji and a book that you would get if you were picked as the winner. All right, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to me ramble. If you're entering the giveaway, good luck. I wish you the best. Happy reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Incredible books, the whole incredible books.